Happy Friday, everyone. John Lordan here with another episode of Brainscratch. This is a case that I've had on my list for a while, and I've been kind of waiting for the right time to do it. It's almost more of a searchlight case, except authorities came to a conclusion very early in the investigation that they were pretty sure they were looking into a homicide. So that's why I've moved it over into Brainscratch. And it ties in with something that has happened over the past week. I don't know if you're familiar with the Timmothy Pitzen case and what happened around that, but essentially we had someone that came forward that said they were Timothy. It turned out that they weren't. This case kind of relates to that. The case we're looking into today is that of Robbie Romero. But before we get into that, I want to give you guys a really quick reminder. Next Friday, we don't have a Brainscratch, but we are doing a LordanArts live. That's right, a live stream. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the cold case conference that I'm going to, what it was like, what I learned, plus we're going to do some Q&A. That's on April 19th. 10 a.m. Central. I really hope you'll be there. There's a link in the description box down below so you can set the reminder in YouTube, but you might also want to set a personal reminder. You know, some of those YouTube notifications can be kind of flaky. So if you have a personal calendar, throw it in the personal calendar too. I really want to make sure as many of you are there as possible. Bring your questions, let's chat and have a good time. All right, so on to today's case. Here is a picture of Robbie Romero, who went missing when he was 7 years old. Let's go ahead and start with the Charlie Project. Several more pictures of him here. He went missing on June 7th, 2000 in Sante Fe, New Mexico at the age of 7. He was last seen on June 7th at approximately 7 p.m. in his hometown of Sante Fe, New Mexico. He was walking to his friend's home in the 2900 block of Balama Drive at the time, which was only about 3 blocks from Robert's family residence. He never arrived and has not been heard from again. Robert's family attempted to locate him by themselves for several hours after he was last seen. They summoned law enforcement after 8 hours. So, first of all, some people are going to be critical of the fact that they waited 8 hours to call law enforcement. But on top of that, we have another situation because law enforcement drops the ball a little bit in terms of notifying from the night shift to the day shift about the fact that there's a missing kid. And we're going to touch on that more as we go through the articles here today. But whenever I hear a story like this, especially one with, this is not a really solid time frame in terms of events leading up to his disappearance, I am always extremely curious about where the information comes about the last time he was seen. And in this case in particular, that's a really important question. Now, there's not a whole lot of digital articles available, but I'm going to use my newspapers.com resource here, and we're going to look at some good old-fashioned newsprint and see if we can kind of put this together. So here's an article from the Sante Fe New Mexican on the 10th of June in the year 2000. Romero was last seen Wednesday night near his home in the 2900 block of Balama Drive in South Santa Fe, about 6:30 p.m., according to this. He told his brother that he was going to go play at a friend's house a block away. So it's his brother. Now, as far as I can tell, he does have more than one brother. There is a brother named Ronnie that I believe is the brother that this is actually referring to. And it just becomes important because, in particular, for several of these missing persons cases that we look into, if there's a dispute of some kind, the last person that saw the person before they supposedly disappear, we have to wonder about the validity of that information. Is it really a solid account? Are they trying to protect themselves if they might have been involved in the person's disappearance in some way? So in this case in particular, that's a really important question to kind of keep in mind as we roll forward and see what happened with the investigation. On to another article from the Sante Fe New Mexican, this one on the 11th of July, 2000. So we're talking just over a month later. Missing boy case, now murder probe. Although police still have hope that a missing 7-year-old Santa Fe boy will be found alive, the case is being treated primarily as a homicide investigation, Police Chief John Denko said Monday. All right. So I'm trying to put this together in a way that makes sense. So we've got the information that comes out about his disappearance. We know the information's coming from his brother. A month later, we now hear that police are looking at this as a murder investigation. Does it tie into the brother or suspicions around the brother? Yes, it does. And we're going to get more into that as we go forward here. But we see very quickly, just a few days after that article, that we have police start digging in a local landfill. And essentially, they go looking in this landfill based on a tip that Robbie is in the landfill. They try to search there for about 2 or 3 days. Apparently, the conditions are just awful. I mean, we're talking New Mexico in July, very hot, and a landfill is probably the last place that most of us want to be. So they only get to work there for a few days before they basically call it off. And that is confirmed in this article from the 16th of July, 2000 from the Albuquerque Journal, landfill search abandoned. So what happened around here? Why did this change so quickly from a missing person to a potential homicide investigation? Sante Fe, NewMexican.com has a timeline of events for the decade, basically, leading from when he went missing right up to the 10th anniversary of his disappearance. So we're going to bounce back and forth to this article a little bit, but let's roll back time just a bit. June 15th, 2000. So this is only approximately a week after Robbie went missing. Ronnie Romero, Robbie's oldest brother, is arrested on an outstanding warrant on misdemeanor charges of assault and battery against family members. So Ronnie is, I believe he's 22 years old at the time that Robbie goes missing. And I've looked into some different accounts here. Ronnie seems to be someone that is struggling with drug and alcohol abuse. He lives at home. I believe he lives at home with a girlfriend and 2 children that they have together. And in some of the cases I've seen against him, it looks like he actually gets in physical altercations with his family, and his family winds up actually calling the police, and then he's arrested for those altercations. So we're already seeing some trends here that are disturbing when we consider the fact that we have a little boy missing and we have an older brother that is getting in some type of physical confrontations with his family. Let's go ahead and continue on the timeline. June 17th, 2000, a woman calls 911 claiming Ronnie confessed to responsibility for his brother's death. Obviously, a very big occurrence, and we don't know much about this woman at this point. There's another woman that comes into play here as well. We know a bit more about her, but this first woman that called into 911, I don't have any information. I don't know how reliable she is. I don't know if she is his girlfriend at the time that is living there, but things just get weirder from here. July 13th, 2000, police begin the 3-day search of the Caja del Rio landfill for Robbie's body. That's those articles that we were looking at. July 16th, 2000, Ronnie calls the police and then implicates his girlfriend in Robbie's disappearance. So this is a really bizarre turn. And essentially, Ronnie calls police saying, my girlfriend just confessed to running over Robbie in a car, then put him in the car, then drove him around, couldn't figure out where to place him, eventually left him in a dumpster, I believe is the story. And you need to come over here and arrest her. So police go there and they show up, and the woman is completely passed out. They wake her up from being completely asleep and tell her, he just told us that you confessed to all this. She has no idea what they're talking about. She has no idea what Ronnie's talking about. And there's a lot of other strangeness that happened around this, where when investigators started coming around the house originally, Ronnie had some conversations with them about what type of charges might be pressed if there was an accidental death that happened, or if Robbie was found to be killed accidentally. Just Ronnie is pulling so much attention and focus in this case right out of the gate that, quite honestly, this is one of those cases where I wonder if the media coverage is even fair and or accurate, because we have someone, he's struggling with addictions. He obviously keeps pulling attention to himself time and time again. I mean, throughout the whole history of this kid's disappearance, Ronnie's just pulling attention to himself over and over and over. Not necessarily implicating himself, just with his constant antics and getting in trouble and getting more charges and then being let out and then 4 days later wrecking his probation. I mean, this guy is just pulling so much focus. I'm struggling with even the investigators. Are they just having their attention pulled so much by Ronnie that they're losing sight of the investigation and what else could be going on here? Is there potentially some other story where Robbie did leave to go to his friend's house and was abducted on the walk, or something as simple as that? We don't know, because all the media coverage, and it seems like the investigative focus on this, is pinned so strongly on Ronnie. And I'm not saying that I blame investigators for that. Ronnie is sure making a lot of noise and taking a lot of strange steps here. I don't know. But so we have this phone call that goes in. This woman says, Ronnie says he confessed. Then later we have Ronnie calling in saying, hey, my girlfriend just confessed. Come arrest her. Very, very strange stuff. August 24th, 2000, police search Fenton Lake for Robbie's body. I believe that's based on another tip. September 6th, 2000, Robbie's mother, Evelyn Romero, reports her son, Ronnie, failed a lie detector test regarding Robbie's disappearance. Now, we've talked about on the channel, I always throw this caveat out. A lot of people don't trust the reliability of lie detectors. Ronnie would go on to fail several lie detectors in regards to this case. In an interesting turn, in one of them, and I think this might actually be a better use for lie detectors, because they certainly rate a person's nervousness level. They asked him about several locations, and they noted that he was having reactions to a few of the locations that were brought up. That's kind of interesting to me in terms of a use for a lie detector. But his mother, Evelyn, is also put through a lie detector. She passes. Their father put through a lie detector. He passes. So Ronnie's the only one that's failing these tests more than once. September 26th through October 10th, 2000, police again search the Caja del Rio landfill for Robbie's body. So it's pretty clear that they have some information that's coming into them that keeps pulling them back to that landfill time and time again. And later there's a statement that Ronnie makes that you could also say might be related to the landfill, but we don't know for sure. There's a bit of a strange occurrence that happens, and it's something that I have never seen before in relation to Crimestoppers. This is from the Sante Fe, New Mexican on the 16th of August, 2000. Police end quest for tipster's identity. So some of the information that came in, these tips that keep coming into them, one of them came in through Crimestoppers, and police wanted to know specifically who gave that tip. Now, if you know anything about Crimestoppers, the whole foundation of Crimestoppers is that it works on an anonymous nature. So any tipster can call in, and they should be able to feel safe and confident that they will not be traced for kicking that information in. And in short, how it works is you call Crimestoppers. You don't tell them who you are, but you pass along the information you have. They give you a randomized serial number that you hold on to. And if you see that that case is eventually solved, you can call them back, you can give them that serial number, and if your tip is part of what solved that case, then you will get a reward. But the fundamentals of Crimestoppers is that it's supposed to be anonymous, that people can trust that. Here, we had the police actually try to go around the system, and they got a warrant for the phone call records to Crimestoppers and then tried to use that information to backtrace the tipster's phone call to them. Thankfully, it didn't work, and eventually they agreed that they would no longer try to get this tipster's identity, but it went through some nonsense first that could have undermined a nationwide program for having these tips come in. It could have really damaged Crimestoppers. You guys know, if you watch this channel, if there's a Crimestoppers number for a particular case, I'm always putting that out there because I want to give every opportunity to anyone that has the information to get that information in. And if they can't have their name attached to it for safety reasons or whatever, I'm fine with that. Then use the Crimestoppers number. But this really could have just blown the whole Crimestoppers operation altogether. I'm really surprised that the police were kind of reckless in that way. I get that they're trying to solve this. I get that there's information coming in and they want to be able to go talk to that person directly. I've called in tips to enforcement agencies on the behalf of other people, and it's almost instant. It's the first thing they want. They want to go back to the actual source. So I get where they see that that's important. I wouldn't undermine a nationwide protocol to do that, which it looks like they were trying to do, but thankfully they didn't get too far. Back to the timeline, November 20th, 2000, Ronnie is sentenced to a treatment facility. From what I saw looking into this, he's in and out of treatment facilities somewhat regularly. November 25th, 2000, Police Supervisor Jerry Archuleta is demoted from lieutenant to sergeant for his handling of the case. So what happened to get Archuleta demoted? Let's go to another article, the Sante Fe New Mexican, from the 29th of November in the year 2000. Police have said the search for the boy began 9 hours after he was reported missing. So keep in mind, 8 hours from the family, 9 additional hours after that. That night, his mother, Evelyn Romero, stopped Officer Isaac Valerio in front of her home to report her son missing. But neither Archuleta, the night shift supervisor, or anyone on the graveyard shift told the day shift commander about the disappearance. I was the commander on duty the night of the boy's disappearance, Archuleta said Tuesday. Valerio's missing boy report wasn't up to standard. I failed to supervise correctly. So that's his comments about it at the time. I can tell you that I've seen articles since then. He actually went on to become a lawyer, and then he ran for district court judge on at least one occasion. And at that time, the media kind of asked him about this occurrence again. He eventually loses his job over this. They asked him about this occurrence again and said, would you do anything different? And he basically said no, that he felt like he'd done everything the proper way. But here we can see he's quoted in an article from back at the time being a bit more honest, it seems like, or a bit more upfront, or maybe his perspective has changed for some reason. In hindsight, he thinks he did everything fine. I don't know. Maybe he feels differently after he lost his job on that. And back to the timeline, December 29th, 2000, police release a 30-second commercial with footage of the missing 7-year-old. So you can see, I mean, we have searches going on. They're using helicopters. They're using special cameras, trying to detect heat when he initially goes missing. None of those leads are turning anything up. I'm also seeing articles from the community kind of complaining about the police's response. In particular, I guess they did not bring dogs on the scene very early. So I'm seeing some letters that are written into the newspaper and the newspaper's posting about, do the police really have the correct resources for handling a missing child? And how come these dogs weren't brought out earlier? I'm also seeing backlash about how the police are treating the family. And I think that might be in relation to accusations about Ronnie. But there's other stuff that we're going to see that develops between the family and the police in this case as well. That's not necessarily, kind of related to Ronnie, but other people that are being offended by how the police are treating them and the family as well. So a lot of drama spinning around this. Of course there should be. This is, we have a missing 7-year-old, but sometimes I get frustrated because I wonder how much all this other noise takes away from the focus of trying to actually find Robbie. And we might have some of that going on in this case. So here at an article from Carlsbad, Current Argus in Carlsbad, New Mexico, from the 27th of January, 2001, we get the first of several remains found and are being tested to see if they could be Robbie. Sante Fe police are awaiting the DNA test results to see if the skull matches that of 7-year-old Robbie Romero, who disappeared June 7th from his Sante Fe neighborhood. Deputy Police Chief Beverly Lennon said the skull, found January 19th by a road worker near Los Gatos, California, matches the descriptions of 2 missing children, one of them being Robbie. The other is a 7-year-old girl missing for about a year. California authorities have been searching for Ziana Fairchild since her mother reported her missing on December 9th, 1999. Unfortunately for Robbie's family, the DNA does not match Robbie. It does wind up matching Ziana Fairchild. So Let's get back to the timeline and see what happens next. June 3rd, 2002, Robbie's parents file a lawsuit against the city of Santa Fe and its police department, alleging the initial handling of the case might have cost the boy his life. And of course, if you have the police department that has essentially confirmed that something was mishandled, I mean, we have Archuleta saying that in the paper, but outside of that, you have the police department actually showing that they're reprimanding him by demoting him. That would certainly give family pretty reasonable grounds for pressing a court case like this and seeking damages. So what happens? August 2002, the police department actually fires Archuleta. Like I mentioned, he then goes off and essentially starts a legal career. Just a quick note before we continue, you might hear some little tinkling kind of in the background. I'm in the middle of a blizzard right now. Might be the first real blizzard that I've experienced since moving out to Minnesota. It's just there's snow and ice kind of blowing up on the window. So I hope it's not too terrible. I'll see if I can use some denoiser to try to take it out on the video, but just wanted to let you guys know what's happening with that. September 13th, 2002. So we have another set of remains found. The FBI announces that tests on remains found in the northwestern part of New Mexico in the Navajo reservation are inconclusive. And around that occurrence, it's kind of strange because we've had September 11th that has happened, throughout this period of time between Robbie going missing and up to this point. And when these remains are found on the Navajo reservation, the FBI is completely overwhelmed. Their labs are just overwhelmed because they're trying to process DNA from 9/11 still at this point. And that actually comes out as a bit of an excuse. I think it's a reasonable excuse when some citizens start speaking up about what's going on with this test. These remains were found 3 months ago. We still don't know if this is Robbie or not. So the FBI comes back, essentially says, look, we've been overworked with 9/11. But then they come back and say, we've run the test. We can't conclude if this is really Robbie or not. Essentially, the samples just aren't good enough. They're not strong enough. They are then tasked with trying to find better samples from the remains in parts that might have not been as exposed to weather. They do, and they determine that it is not Robbie. So another one of those cases where we have remains found. A family is hopeful the answers are coming, but then they learn that they're no closer to those answers. On October 7th, 2002, Rudy Romero Sr., Robbie's father, dies. So I believe there are 4 brothers total. We've got Robbie, who's gone missing. We have Ronnie, who everyone thinks might be related to him being missing. There is Rudy Jr., and there is Ricky, I believe. So Rudy Jr. commented about Rudy Sr.'s passing and said in an article that he thought Robbie's disappearance really played into that essentially Rudy Sr. had struggled with it so bad that he turned to the bottle a little too much, a little too often. The official reports on his death talk about him possibly also facing an acute disease, but they don't go into real specifics about what that disease is. But unfortunately, we do have Rudy Sr. passing away. November 7th, 2003, a judge refuses to order investigators to hand over their file on Robbie's disappearance to the boy's mother. So the family essentially sues and is trying to get access to the investigative files. Now, typically on active cases, trying to get that information is practically impossible, especially if you go directly to the police. I think you pretty much don't have a chance at all of that ever being turned over. But they decide to go the legal route, and the first judgment comes back that they cannot have access to those files. And I'm sure it's based on the fact that they're saying, look, there's someone in the family that might be responsible for this. If we give them our files and that person sees it, this could blow our entire investigation. But that story doesn't end there either. February 19th, 2004, Archuleta sues the department for alleged civil rights violations. As far as I know, he does not go anywhere. I believe that is thrown out of court. June 28th, 2004, the Court of Appeals says police must hand over their case file to the Romero family. So essentially the family ups it, takes it to an appeals court, and wins the right to get the case file. I got to tell you guys, I've never heard of that happening before for an active case. I'm really surprised, especially now they've never formally said that Ronnie is a suspect. They will call him a person of interest. His mother, Evelyn, says that to her personally, investigators have been very clear and have referred to him as a suspect. But in terms of publicly into the media, they never say that Ronnie is actually a suspect. But we now have their files getting handed over to the family. And did that potentially blow the case? We're still sitting here, and ultimately this case still is unsolved. So I can't tell you for sure if that hurt. It certainly didn't help the case because we still don't have an answer here. November 12th, 2004, Evelyn releases an age-progressed photo of Robbie and says she believes he's still alive. February 24th, 2005, the New Mexico Supreme Court says the Sante Fe Police Department acted appropriately in demoting Archuleta. I believe that's right around the time that they go ahead and drop that lawsuit altogether. September 2005, we have Ronnie failing his third polygraph test. And around there, between there and January 2006, in January, he comes up with a statement where he tells police that Robbie's body is 60 feet deep. And that's the statement I mentioned earlier, where once again, police are saying, should we go search that landfill again? Now, there's some other things that happen in here. Ronnie gets in trouble, I think, for another domestic dispute that happens at his home. And when police show up, they find drugs and they hit him with these drug charges. He goes through the process at court and essentially comes out on probation. He's on house arrest for, I believe it's 2 years, if I remember right, which quite honestly just boggles my mind. You've got a guy that has shown time and time again that he's a problem at home, and you're putting him on house arrest. How is that supposed to protect anyone? How is that supposed to help anything here? I don't know. But they put him on house arrest with very strict conditions. One of those being, I think he's got an ankle monitor, and I think he's not allowed to drink alcohol. They suggest to him that he should keep a picture of his son around him at all times, so if he starts feeling weak, he can look to that for inspiration to not do these bad things. Within 4 days, he blows that probation and he's back in jail because essentially he decides to go to a party. He gets drunk. He meets up with, I think, his probation officer, and he has a 0.21 blood alcohol content. So during this time that he is essentially arrested for breaking his house arrest and probation, they get this comment from him that Robbie's body is 60 feet deep. So once again, January 10th, 2006, police go back and begin a 3-day search of the Caja del Rio landfill for Robbie's body. And this time they're looking at a different part of the landfill, something that's called a transfer station. This is reminding me of another case I've covered here on the channel. But there's all kinds of different processes that happen with landfills. There's different points along the way. Sometimes there's different material sent in different directions. So now they're searching the transport station. But once again, they don't find any signs of Robbie. And keep in mind, this is, we're coming up on 6 years after the fact here. January 19th, 2006, a grand jury begins hearing testimony from the Romero family members and others connected to the case. So essentially, they're taking a run at Ronnie here. And they're putting it to a grand jury and seeing if the grand jury believes that there's enough information. Through that process, I believe I think there's more polygraph tests that happen. I don't remember if Ronnie is tested, but I know his family is tested. I know all of them have to go and sit on the witness stand and speak about what they know about with this case in particular. January 25th, 2006, Ronnie pleads guilty to charges related to an incident the previous summer in which he was acting crazy at his mother's house and later stabbed a nurse with a needle. January 26th, 2006, Evelyn and other family members testified before the grand jury. Ultimately, the grand jury would choose not to indict Ronnie. So this whole grand jury process winds up going nowhere. He eventually pleads guilty to the charges of the incident that happened at his family's home when he was acting crazy and his mom had to call police and they found the drugs. But when he was rearrested, he supposedly attacked an officer, so they tried to get a battering charge on him. I think he kicked the officer, if I remember right. That charge is acquitted. And it says a judge also declares a mistrial on charge of violating his parole, which I don't know how they could have considered that a mistrial. I think it was pretty clear that he violated his parole if they're talking about the same instance I told you about. But a lot of strange things happen in this case. November 27th, 2006, a state district judge sentences Ronnie to spend about the next 6 months in prison for violating conditions of his house arrest agreement. December 2007, Robbie's mother and brother say in a lawsuit that the Sante Fe police are harassing them. Now, that occurrence, basically what happens is at some point the police are called to the house again, and they determined that there are some children in the house that might be at risk for being harmed. So they try to arrange for those children to stay in other places with family. They don't actually, it's not like the police are taking the children out of the custody of the family. They're just trying to say, don't let the kids come back to this house right now because, we've got a bad situation going on in this house and the kids could be hurt. The family essentially doesn't agree with what the police do in that case, and they start saying that they have been harassed. Now, Ronnie has been saying that he's been harassed for years at this point, but now the police or the family is also saying that the police are harassing them, and there are some charges that go through court on this. February 29th, 2008, Ronnie is sentenced to jail for a year for violating his probation for the 6th time. April 24th, 2008, police recover a bag of bones from the backyard of the Romero family. The bones were later found to be remains of a dog. September 21st, 2008, Ronnie dies in jail. Now, this could be about the worst thing, I think, to happen for this case, particularly if Ronnie is our main person of interest or our main suspect. He keeps talking to police, keeps saying that he has information, but none of that information ever really seems to pan out. I still am on the fence of, I don't know if Ronnie's really involved with this or not, or if he's just out of control, if he's just so used to pulling attention and focus to himself, so used to lying. I really don't know. There's nothing that I've seen throughout all the information I've looked at in this case where he's given someone a piece of the puzzle and they have gone and verified that that was actually true. It seems like all the information that's coming out of him and even these tips that are being called in around him are ultimately not paying off. So I don't know if this is a guy that is just so messed up, so challenged that he is making up these stories or maybe threatening people with pieces of this story. I don't know. There's so much that swirls around him. I can't make sense out of it. Here's an article from the Sante Fe New Mexican on the 4th of January, 2009. Sheriff Greg Solano and a state medical examiner say Ronnie Romero, 31, died of an accidental morphine overdose. We have no evidence that points to a homicide, Solano said. And he's saying that because the family came out in this article and said they believe that Ronnie was actually killed in jail. They also say in this article that they don't think Ronnie had anything to do with Robbie's disappearance. And I don't know, guys. I'm really stuck on a fence on that one. There's just nothing that points to that, Solano said. Ronnie Romero was found in his cell about 10 a.m. September 21st. His cellmate reported seeing him snorting ground-up pills at one point during the night he died. And Sheriff's Department investigators discovered 6 grams of black tar heroin in his rectum. The coroner also found morphine in his blood, according to an autopsy report. So it sounds like he knew he was going to be in jail for a period of time. I don't know if that's close to when he was actually arrested and he was smuggling it in there, or if no, he was in jail for a while at this point. So I don't know why he's hiding it in that way, but obviously he was. And it seems like it's just the drug use. I've heard other information. There's a podcast that was released on this recently, and in that podcast, they're citing other sources that are saying that the bags were not actually broken. So it doesn't seem like him having the black tar heroin in that spot is what poisoned him, essentially. But his cellmate saying that he saw him snorting ground up pills off the ground is probably more the likely suspect or culprit in that. And once again, back to the end of the timeline. May 28th, 2010, a federal jury finds in favor of Sante Fe Police in a harassment case filed by Evelyn Romero, stemming from a December 2005 incident in which the Romeros claimed police tried taking 2 young children from the family home in an attempt to disrupt the family while preparing for January 2006 grand jury testimony. So ultimately, it looks like the family would not win that particular case. And on June 7th, 2010, on the 10th anniversary of Robbie's disappearance, Evelyn Romero says she remains hopeful that her son is still alive. So I got to tell you guys, up to this point, for the first decade of this case, there are literally hundreds, I think somewhere between 300 and 400 articles just at newspapers.com about this particular case. After 2010, this thing severely dries up. It's almost like once Ronnie is dead, I don't know if the investigation stops because they were so focused on Ronnie being a part of it. Maybe they just decided to stop processing it. I don't know if there's just no new leads, that everything really just literally dried up to the point where there was nothing else to do. But there is not a whole lot that happens to this case, except for one thing that happens just about a year later, September 15th, 2011. Man claims to be Sante Fe's long missing Robbie Romero. And this is part of the reason why I wanted to cover this case today, because we essentially just had this happen in the Timmothy Pitzen case. We're going to talk about that at the end of this video too, so I can let you guys know what's going on with all that. A man claiming to be Robbie Romero, a boy who disappeared from Sante Fe in 2000 at the age of 7, turned up at the family home Wednesday. The man told Robbie's mother, Evelyn, that he was Robbie. The mother then called police. Now, that's a really simple way of saying what's happened at this point, and I don't know that it's exactly accurate. There's some better detail we're going to get from another article here. I don't think this is a scenario where this guy went and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm your missing son." I know that article makes it sound like that, but there's a bit more to it than that. Of course, DNA tests are going to be pulled on this. DNA to show if teen with no memory of childhood is boy who vanished in 2000. And here we've actually got pictures. So we have Robbie, the known photo of him at age 7 here in the middle. We have the age progression over here on the left side. And then on the right side is a man named Robert Terrazas. And he is the one that thinks he might be Robbie Romero. Police met the man at the home of Evelyn Romero, the mother of the missing boy, around 7:30 p.m. Wednesday. Police say they interviewed the teenager for about 20 minutes. "I think it looks a lot like him," Evelyn Romero said. "He said he goes by Robert and he and his parents are from Mexico, but he has all the characteristics of Robbie, the ears, the light skin, and he looked at all the pictures of Robbie and was just amazed. He doesn't really know what to think either." Family friends who Evelyn Romero said have known the teenager for less than a year brought him to her home Wednesday night. And I think that's a really important difference that we're looking at in terms of this case versus what happened in the Timmothy Pitzen case. This guy didn't just come up to the home. And if I saw correctly, it was actually one of the brothers, one of Robbie's brothers, that got to know this guy and said, "You know, you look quite a bit like my brother that's been missing, and I think you should come over." So much different situation than we have with Timothy's case, but let's continue here. So according to this article, he literally didn't even necessarily know about Robbie's case or as much about Robbie's case until he went and met with Evelyn. Police are familiar with the teen as 19-year-old Robert Terrazas from an arrest this past weekend on one charge of being a minor under the influence of alcohol and another of concealing his identity. That one makes me a little bit nervous, but the teenager, who police believe goes by both Robert Romero and Robert Terrazas, says his family is from Mexico and that he grew up in Utah, but he has no recollection of his early childhood. Terrazas' mother was interviewed Thursday afternoon by Sante Fe Police. She said she gave birth to Terrazas in Mexico, and both of them lived in Utah for much of the boy's life before moving to Sante Fe a few years ago. She could not provide police with a birth certificate, but was cooperative and says there is no doubt Terrazas is her son. She also said a recent head injury may explain her son's memory loss about his childhood. Now, a few other articles have gone more into that head injury, and essentially Robert tried to end his own life by strangling himself. And since then, apparently his memory has been severely impacted. I've gotten my hopes up so many times before, and I don't want to freak this young man out right now, Evelyn Romero said. I am trying really hard now to be patient and wait for this DNA test. Terrazas agreed to provide police with a DNA swab, which investigators have forwarded to the state crime lab for analysis. It will be compared with a DNA sample from the Romero family. It sounds like his interaction with the police is kind of okay at first, but then seems to degrade. The police say that they wanted to check his fingerprints. He wouldn't let them. They then said that they wanted to take a picture of him, and he wouldn't let them, and then he wound up leaving very soon after that. So it does seem like he's nervous of something. Of course, he has just been arrested recently, but I don't know. Cause for concern in terms of him being Robbie? Maybe. While the man interviewed Wednesday has a birth date of April 24th, 1992, the missing Robbie Romero's birth date was April 10th, 1993. And what happens in this case? No big surprise here. Robbie Terrazas is not Robbie Romero. The DNA results are negative. They issue a press release from the Sante Fe Police saying on September 14th, 2011, Sante Fe Police was provided information that a 19-year-old identified as Robert Terrazas was portraying himself as Robbie Romero. Once again, I don't know where that's coming from unless, you know, they did say that with his arrest that he was concealing his identity. Perhaps he gave Robbie Romero's name as his own at that point. I don't know, but I don't know why they're saying that he was portraying himself as Robbie Romero. He received information that Mr. Terrazas was going to meet with Evelyn Romero, whom he referred to as his birth mother. Police spoke with Mr. Terrazas at the home of Ms. Romero, where he consented in providing a DNA sample. The result of the exam is that Mr. Terrazas is not Ms. Romero's missing child, Robbie Romero. We informed Ms. Romero of the DNA results before the conference. The missing case of Robbie Romero will remain open and active. And of course, we have a family devastated by this information. Despite the fact they're trying to not get their hopes up, I don't know how you can avoid having your hopes raised in a situation like that. We had our hopes so high, said Tina Dean, Robbie's 80-year-old ailing grandmother. I thought God wanted me to see my grandson before I go, but I'm not giving up. Sante Fe Police Chief Ray Rael said no charges would be filed against the 19-year-old Robert Terrazas because no crime was committed. Members of the Romero family say they hold no ill will toward Terrazas, who they believe is troubled. He had a lot of characteristics that are similar to Robbie, and he thought so too, Evelyn Romero said. Regardless, I appreciate him being so cooperative and giving his DNA. That's all I wanted. Police Chief Rael said, I'd be hard-pressed to say it's a hoax. Maybe an unfortunate, bizarre lead that didn't pan out. I don't see someone plotting out this type of scenario. And that statement really sums up what I'm struggling with in this and in Timothy's case as well. Who would do this knowing that you're going to hurt a family in this way? And to what end? What's the benefit? I mean, do you think that you're going to be able to pull this off, that they're going to take you in, you're going to go live with them, they're going to start buying you clothes and stuff? I don't understand what the motivation is here. Is it strictly for the attention? Is it because you want to see your picture in the newspaper and you want to be this big news story for a day? I don't know. I don't know what motivates these people to do this. And, you know, we see it here in the true crime community, too. We looked at a case last year, I believe, where a woman stepped forward and said she was a missing person. And we had someone that works really hard in the true crime community to raise exposure to these cases. She got completely wrapped up in that person's story and almost completely blew her credibility. So it's one of those things where all I see coming out of people faking the fact that they're missing children is harm and hurt. For the families, for people that are trying to help, for the law enforcement, for everyone that cares about that true missing persons case. Why does it happen? I really have no idea. So after this, there is basically nothing. A few little pops in the press just about Archuleta running for that district court judge position. And of course, they mentioned that he's the guy that got fired for the Robbie Romero thing. A couple of light touches on Robbie's name being thrown in with a bunch of other victims from the area, but nothing real solid in terms of actually progressing Robbie's case. His family, in the last article I saw that was really an in-depth where they were being interviewed, they're really strong about the fact that they don't think Ronnie has anything to do with it. His mother is not quite as hopeful as she was early on that Robbie might still be alive. She thinks that there's a very good chance that Robbie is with his father in heaven, but Ronnie has passed on as well. She didn't mention him being part of that equation. I don't know. It's hard because I can tell this is a family that was already severely hurt. I didn't even go into, there was this whole other aspect where a cousin of theirs, I think that was only 14 or 18 months old, got accidentally run over by a family member. Like literally the kids playing out in the front yard and someone backs up a car and kills another family member. This family has just been struck by such tragic events time and time again that I don't know, even if Ronnie is the person, I don't know that any of the brothers or Evelyn would be able to see that. It just might break their hearts because they faced so much. They faced so much tragedy, just a terrible, terrible decade and longer for these people. I mean, we're now coming up on 20 years of Robbie being missing. So in the description box below, I will have a few other links to additional threads about this. One over at Reddit, written by someone who went to the same school as Robbie. They shared a lot of the same teachers. A Web Sleuths thread also down below, multiple pages on that, and a kind of new true crime podcast called Our Lives, Their Deaths that did an episode specifically on Robbie. And this podcast has a little bit of a unique perspective because they're talking to people that live in the community. So you kind of get their insight in terms of what's going on with this case. One of the people they talked to actually worked with Robbie's father as well. So some interesting insight that you might get from Our Lives, Their Deaths. So please be sure to check that out if you... Wow, I almost sounded Canadian there for a second. Please be sure to check that out if you are looking for more information on this case. Not that there's anything wrong with sounding Canadian. I'm just not used to having that come out of me. All right. So I told you guys I wanted to touch on the Timmothy Pitzen case really, really quickly before we end today's video. I was just hoping that looking into Robbie's story would give me a bit of new perspective for looking at what happened with Timothy's case. I don't know if it does because I really feel like Robert Terrazas was in a very bad spot. And I don't know that what he was doing was intentional. I don't think he was really trying to hurt that family. Like I said, he was kind of brought into that situation by other people that thought that he might be Robbie Romero. This, in the Timmothy Pitzen case, we just have a whole different situation. So starting with an article at yourtango.com, local residents in Kentucky saw a teenager wandering the streets and proceeded to call the police. When the police arrived and approached the young man, he told them he was Timmothy Pitzen. The next day, it was revealed that he was not Timmothy Pitzen, but Brian Rini. The 23-year-old from Ohio is a convicted felon who was just released from prison in March. According to Fox News, Rini had told police that he had been abused for years and just managed to escape his captors. After a DNA test proved that he was not Timmothy Pitzen, Rini admitted that he had seen the story about Pitzen's disappearance and wanted to get away from his own family. All right, first of all, I've seen pictures of this guy, and I don't know how you could look at that guy and think he's 14 years old. Just right off the bat, the picture doesn't make sense. We'll see one of him here in a moment. The Timmothy Pitzen case, in terms of missing person stories, is a pretty... I guess you could say famous. I hate using that word, but it's a pretty big story. If you're not familiar with it, I'll have a link in the description box below so you can check out my searchlight on it. But why you would try to align yourself with that story, in particular in that way, when you've just come out of jail, once again, my mind is just blown at what's going on here. What is the benefit of doing this? I do not get. If you wanted to get your picture in the paper, great. You got your picture in the paper for being known as the guy that once again hurt a family that's been hurting for years and years and years, wondering what happened to their missing loved one. I don't understand the motivation in all this. Court documents prove that Rini has a history of mental health problems and was treated at a center in Ohio for people with substance abuse and mental health problems. Rini's brother, Jonathan Rini, spoke up about his brother's actions. "I wasn't surprised he did something stupid," Jonathan Rini said. "I was just surprised he stooped that low for attention." Jonathan felt terrible about what his brother's actions did to Pitzen's family. "It's too much for them," he said. "They shouldn't have to go through this. No one in the world should have to go through this." Rini could be facing up to 8 years in prison, facing charges of making false statements to federal agents. Interesting that they have that charge here, but in the previous situation with Robert, who, once again, I don't think should be charged in this case, but he wasn't talking to federal agents. He was talking to local PD. So I guess at the local PD level, in particular for New Mexico, they don't have a charge like they do here at the federal level in this case. But Rini might not just be facing jail time. He might actually already be in there. First of all, here's a picture of him. I just have to show it to you guys. I don't know if it's just me, but I look at this guy and there's no way that I think he's 14 years old. A preliminary hearing for Rini is scheduled for April 19th. He's the convicted felon who impersonated an Ohio boy missing since 2011, and he was ordered Tuesday to remain in jail until his case is resolved. So essentially, they're not giving him any option for bail. And here we have Timmothy Pitzen, the actual missing person in this case. After he was confronted with the DNA test results that confirmed he was not Timothy, Rini confessed to his alleged lie and said he learned about the boy from a report on the case that aired on ABC's 2020, according to the criminal complaint. Also, according to that complaint, Rini has a long criminal record, and he was released from Ohio prison on March 7th. He served an 18-month sentence for burglary and vandalism. On 2 previous occasions, Rini falsely portrayed himself as a juvenile sex trafficking victim, according to the complaint. So, at least in Rini's case, especially when you consider that, sounds to me like he's certainly doing this for attention, and his brother seems to think so as well. But like I said, I don't think we have that going on with Robert Sarasas in Robbie's case. But what do you guys think? Let's talk about that in the comments below. Can you guys help me understand why people are doing this, why we seem to have it happen time and time again, an act that hurts so many people? Because I'm just not getting it. Before I end today's episode, I have numerous new patrons to thank. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really, really appreciate it. I'm trying to be more open with you guys about what's going on the YouTube front, and doing so is essentially motivating you guys to act, and I can't thank you enough. So let's start with the new patrons: Angela Lees, Randy, Olivia F., Carol Williamson, Barbara Smith, Hannah Veral, Kelly Terry, Renee Goldman, Bella Berenice, Christine Not So English Accent Peterson. That's an interesting middle name you have there, Christine. And Anna Maria Rome. You are all new patrons. I really, really appreciate having your support. On top of that, Elena J. Engel increased her pledge. Amy Rostad increased her pledge. Carolyn Curtis increased her pledge. Angel Dawn Moyer also increased her pledge. I don't want to miss anyone. Oh, and Sarah. Sarah also increased her pledge. So thank you guys so much. I know I say it every time, but I'm never going to stop saying it. I cannot do this without you. Knowing that I have your support helps me continue helping other people. And this is what I want to do. This is the best work of my life. And I thank you so much for making sure that I can stay here doing this. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Keep you and your families safe. And I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of 3 Men and a Mystery on the LordanArts channel.